Boom. The body keeps the score, and your body may have completely forgotten how to relax. Welcome to episode 117 of the Be Yourself and Love It podcast. At least mine's forgotten how to relax. But I'm here with a great friend, a great new friend, Tara Bentall, who I met at a festival called Dance Camp East, where I gave a little book talk to support my new book. You might have heard of it if you've been listening to the show. Big Pharma, Guess It Quacks Like a Duck. If you haven't bought a copy yet.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I love the talk you gave, Antony. It was absolutely inspiring. It was really lovely. And look forward to reading your book some more.
Yeah, well, it's and I have to say, meeting you was one of the highlights of the festival for me because one good contact is golden. If you go to an event and you come away with an amazing contact, then that's that's in some way worth selling like another 50 books or whatever. Not that I sold 50. That would have been nice. Chance would be a fine thing. So people at home, go on Amazon and buy like 1 million, or write to me personally and I'll send you a signed one. So yeah, I don't have a strict plan for this conversation. I know I want to talk about like your background, how you came into what you're doing, and a little bit about the technique. And I know quite a lot about the subject matter from a different angle. So I think we're going to synergize a bit. But before we do that, I was just going to give like a little bit of a background because my own journey into my body has been a huge thing. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't realize how uncomfortable I felt using my body and how this isn't normal. When I was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat and I was a blue baby, as they say. My girlfriend who studied as a midwife told me it's quite common actually, but trauma is not uniform. Like different people can experience the same thing and walk away with different kinds of trauma. And I think what I learned that interfaces with what you're going to teach us about from people like the traumatologist Robert Scare is that when you suffer a trauma in life, the mind reacts, but it doesn't unreact. And by the same kind of token, the body can react and then not unreact. So you've got things like even people have tics and things like, or Tourette's and things like that. And what they don't even realize is there's a loop going on where the system believes that it's still experiencing the original event. And so even though I've spent so many months in India on yoga retreats and this and that, I found, still so much tightness in my hamstrings and shoulders. And there's because, and at some point I realized what I was trying to do with yoga, even though yoga is really great and definitely is something that should be incorporated into my recovery, is that it was a bit brute force. Like I was trying to go really hard and stretch against the muscle, which was not tight because it hadn't been stretched enough, if you know what I mean. It was tight because it was kind of fixed in that way, and the body had forgotten how to relax. And that's where I think you come in. And what we're going to talk about today is your experience with the Alexander technique. You're an Alexander technique teacher. My mum always told me to go and do Alexander technique, but who wants to do what their mum says, right?
No one ever. No one ever. Still don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though she's probably right.
Yeah, she was right. But the thing is, from my perspective, I thought Alexander technique was going to be something that I had to go to, that I had to learn. And it seemed too much. It seemed too overwhelming to me. I'm going to have to learn to walk differently and stand differently. But what you showed me when we met was something that can also be administered. So You've heard what I've got to say. I'm not going to ask you a question yet. I'm just going to throw the ball over to you, and I thank you for being so patient and attentive with me, and you guys at home too. So, whatever hearing me sparked up, you can find your own way in to introduce our audience to and share your wisdom and what you've learned.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the Alexander technique, it's changed my life completely and utterly. It's got so many layers to it, and there's so many different ways of coming into it to look at it. But like you say, it's a lot to do with how we carry tension. And there can be so many different reasons that we carry tension. You know, some of it is trauma related. Some of it is like there was an event and it made us do a particular thing and we sort of carried a holding pattern with us. Some of it was that we've always played the violin, so we sort of do this for 8 hours a day, and then when we sort of stop playing the violin, we're still slightly doing that. Some of it's that we're having moment-to-moment reactions to our mental thought processes. So it could be that we're having little mini stress responses to us thinking, oh God, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, or that person said this, that person said that. And we have this internal dialogue that goes on, which is quite often really stressful. And it can set up like holding patterns that we're not even aware that we're doing. Almost all excess tension you won't feel until you let it go. Because you do it habitually all of the time.
You've forgotten that you're even holding the tension.
Yeah, you won't notice that you're holding it because you do it all the time. It feels normal. So it's a really curious thing when you start to undo that, because you only notice that you were holding it when you let go of it. And as you let go, that's the moment that you go, oh, I don't know why I was doing that. Why was I doing that extra breath holding or extra neck tightening or extra face crunching or extra, you know, if somebody brought your attention now to, are your feet completely relaxed? Well, you could probably instantly find that they're not, or is your jaw holding tight? And there's some that are kind of macro big releases that we can let go of quite obviously, like, oh, if I'm actually clamping my jaw shut, that's quite an easy thing to notice. But there can be other ones that are more subtle and more quiet that you wouldn't necessarily notice until you had a bit of hands-on work. And you're right, I do use my hands to teach, so it's kind of administered, as you said, but it is a lesson. So what you learn with that hands-on session is where you're holding and where you might not need to hold. Right. And so then the idea is that you learn to let go of that, and then you can re-let go it. So you can go, oh yeah, that's that thing I was doing where I go like that, and maybe I don't need to do that. Or that's that thing where I was doing where I do that, which is very common. You know, we know that we need to let our shoulders go down. So very commonly to kind of pull our shoulders down and think we're letting go of them down. But actually you've caused lots of tension there through the whole of your back and rib cage, which then stops you breathing. So there can be all these different layers of tension. And the thing to notice is that you can't actually tighten one muscle. You know, I can't tighten my bicep there without tightening that muscle next to it. Right. Well, I can't tighten that muscle next to it without really tightening up here into my neck. Well, if I'm tightening up here into my neck, the chances are it's slightly come up here, and now maybe it's gone into the chest there, and you know, and the muscles are all attached to each other. And so we always think of it in terms of releasing the whole of our muscular suit in order to feel released, in order to feel a little bit lighter, in order to find things a bit easier, because things become much easier when you're making less muscular effort. And so you become more efficient, you become more fluid, you become more graceful, and all of these things, because you have ease of movement that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right. So I've not heard your whole story, so it would be quite interesting just to get in at how you discovered the Alexander technique and how you personally benefited from it. And I know it's been quite a long journey. You know, you're not new when it comes to this stuff. You've got like bags of experience behind you. So I think it would be quite informative for us, and we'd also learn what we might stand to benefit.
Yeah, so when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with a genetic condition And the genetic condition affects connective tissue. So you can probably see it here in my armpit there. I've got kind of lax. If you can see it over there we go.
That's
so
right.
you can see there's kind of lax.
Oh wow, yeah.
Calcium deposits.
Oh
It's
wow.
there in my neck. It's a bit less
Oh
easy to see in
wow,
my neck.
yeah.
It's over the whole of my body actually, and it's also internal. So it could affect my cardiovascular system. It could affect my gastrointestinals. I'm at risk for gastrointestinal bleeds, heart attacks, strokes, intermittent claudication, where you don't get blood flow to your legs.
Mm-hmm.
And the most serious effect of it is actually on eyesight. Well, obviously a heart attack is pretty serious, but it also causes blindness. So
Wow.
not full blindness, but I do have a visual impairment.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost the central vision in my left eye, and in my right eye I have injections every 6 weeks.
Wow.
In order to maintain my vision, and I've had 76 injections now, so thank you very much.
Wow.
NHS, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So obviously being diagnosed with this in my early 20s and being told I shouldn't have children over the age of 30, well, that pressurized me into a really quite unsuitable relationship and having children.
Wow.
Probably in a situation that I wouldn't have had. So then I was in an abusive relationship which then ended, and I was then a single parent. So I've had a lot of difficulties to overcome. But my parents were divorced, so I had a difficult family life growing up. There was lots of intricacies and kind of stress, let's say.
Right.
Lots of stresses.
Right.
Now, as a result of those different things, and probably all sorts of other things that I haven't mentioned, not because I'm not mentioning them, just because I haven't thought of them at this moment, I found myself in my mid-20s really, really anxious, really on like high alert systems. I felt like a general sense of foreboding, and I was very unclear as to exactly what was going on. I didn't know how to handle thinking about my eyesight possibly being lost. I didn't know how to handle thinking about all the potential things that could go wrong with my body. Even managing your skin looking funny at that age is challenging. So there was a lot of reasons for me to be searching and looking for how to manage all of this. And I saw counsellors, and I had gong baths, and I went to yoga, and I was living in Brighton, so I did absolutely every single thing that you could think of to try and work out how on earth to exist as a human being and not feel completely and utterly stressed all of the time. Then I came across a workshop for the Alexander technique, and it said in it that it helped you to lift weights really well.
Wow.
And because of my eyesight, I'm not supposed to lift more than 20 pounds, but I was obviously a single parent. So I was like, well, I need to work out how to lift well rather than not lift, because I'm obviously wanting to lift my child and the shopping and the buggy and the, bag of potatoes to bring it home and all of the rest of it. So then I went to this workshop, and there was an incredible teacher there, Mark. He was called Mark. Paul. No, he was called Paul Marsh. And he was amazing. And I did this workshop, and he put his hands on me, and I thought, oh my God, I think I might be able to live like that. Wow. And he did this amazing exercise with us, where he got us to think of something that was really upsetting us and really like demoralizing us in that present moment, and then took us through releasing the neck, especially sending the head up, releasing the body, and he talked us through in quite a lot of detail, and he used his hands to help. And I thought, oh, that's different. I can actually cope with that thought now. And it wasn't that the thought was gone. It wasn't that the problem was gone, but I felt that I could cope with it better.
Right.
And that led me to want to train. And then it took me 10 years to get the money together to actually train.
Right.
So I did that 6-week course. I was like, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. I really want to do this. And I didn't let go of the idea. And then when I could, that's what I did. And I did the training. And it's a 3-year full-time training.
Wow,
But it took me 7 years because I had a break. We went to New Zealand traveling, and then I had another break because we had a baby, and then I had to go part-time because I had horrendous chronic pain after my third C-section, which was from having that baby. So
wow.
it's completely changed my life. I feel like I can exist within my body. I feel confident. I feel happy. I feel like if I get myself in a pickle, I know how to get myself out of it. I don't feel like, oh yeah, I always make the right decisions or I'm 100% perfect in every aspect of my life, but I feel able to cope. I feel able to self-manage, and I feel comfortable in my physicality. And that's somewhere that I can keep coming back to. If anything gets difficult, I can come back to my physicality, and I'm here and I'm fine.
Awesome.
And that's really useful. Yeah, it's really useful.
What a radical transformation. And, you know, I'm a talk therapist, a counselor. Although I'm going to be training in some body work modalities, which really changed my life in November. I was hoping to do the training in April, but it was pushed back. So, and it's interesting because it's something that I never thought that I wanted to train in, because I thought, I don't know. It's hard to put your mindset back where you were before. Like, oh yeah, that's really good, but I can't see myself doing it for people or teaching it. And I, even when I got my first session with my teacher, Baudrey, and friend, Baudrey Fraser, I had her on the show. I was like, this is really cool, but I can't see myself doing that. But once I was 5-6 sessions in, I was like, oh man, I've got to learn how to do this, even if it's for my own sanity. So I feel like, yeah, when you come across something that's of extreme help, especially when it's body, it's like so intuitive to want to go deeper and find out more, because it's so tangible. That's what I was going to say about being a talk therapist is I really love it, but sometimes it's a little bit ephemeral. You're like, how does one measure the benefit? And sometimes it's really obvious. If someone comes to a session and they're talking and they're very distressed and they leave feeling like they can cope, exactly what you said, you're like, yeah, I've done a really good job today. And a lot of the time it is exactly that. People need to feel like whatever is going on, they can handle it in order to experience any level of peace in their life. You know, it's not necessarily hope, because ultimately there's no hope. We're all destined to the grave. Do you know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, you're just on a one. You're on a train line, and it only goes in one direction, and the direction is straight into the grave. So hope is projecting into the future, thinking at some time things will be better. Well, what if my client's got a degenerative disease? What if they're terminal? What if they're the best of their years really have gone by and things like that? You need to be able to this is what people find so difficult, because it's scary to accept, or they don't want to accept a hopeless state, but that's sometimes all a person needs is to step into that with someone and allow it to be. And when as it was at Warner Earhart said, I think that's his name, what you leave alone tends to leave you alone. Like, if you can let it be, then life's all mind over matter, because if you don't mind, it don't matter, right? So
and the fear of things going wrong is so much
exactly.
worse than the thing actually going wrong at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're projecting into the future. What if this? What if that? What if that? If we can, inch by inch, life's a cinch, mile by mile, life's a trial. It's like, if you want to stop smoking, you just say, do I need one today? Can I get through the day without one? Yeah, I could probably do that. Or maybe just the next hour. Can I wait an hour? Because, after that, there's another hour. When you think, oh, I'm never going to smoke again, You think, well, I'm never going to be able to do that. I might as well just have a fag right now. So, yes, it's the ancient wisdom, be in the present moment. A lot of the time, easier said than done. But I think the
That's where
thing
I
is,
think
go on,
that's where the
please.
body is so useful, isn't it? Because
Yes.
your body is always present.
Hmm. Precisely.
You can always come into your body because you're always here right now.
Right.
So when you've got access to relaxation in your body in a way that you can do that, you don't have to go to sleep. The thing is with using the technique is you can use it at any moment. You don't have to be lying down relaxing on a sofa to feel more relaxed. You can use it in the queue in the shop. You could use it at the petrol pump. You could use it when you're brushing your teeth. You can use it. I'm using it now sitting here.
Right.
So it's something that you can access at
And
all times.
Yes, and that's one of the things I wanted to say. If you can find refuge in your body, some people have so much stored emotional pain, and that it's not even pleasant to just be. I know, because I was there. I think, especially before the age of around, I didn't know what to do with my emotions before my mid-20s. I thought they were just these inconvenient things that came up to annoy me, but gradually feeling into the body. When I first started feeling into the body, I could barely feel below my neck, just a little bit of my chest. And as I continue to practice mindfulness, I can feel so much more of my body. So I'm really into these things: Alexander technique, craniosacral therapy, visceral manipulation, trauma release exercises. I want to get people on to talk about each of these things, but more of that anon. So there's a few things that I do want to ask you now. One of the things, but I want to park it for a second, is you keep on saying you can use the technique anytime you want. So obviously we're going to have to ask, what is the technique? But just before that, we got a little bit of a view of the kind of outside trappings of what you did to get to where you are now as a teacher and a practitioner. It took 7 years. But what was the internal process like? How did you gradually, like, what changed, and then what changed, and what did you learn? What did you, like, was it a gradual thing, or did it happen with a bang? Can you remember the
It's
stages?
super gradual. It's so
Right.
gradual, and you don't know what you're learning until you've learned it. And that's the curious thing about it. It's not like if I said to you, I'm going to teach you a concerto, I'll play you the concerto, and this is what we're working towards. So you've got an idea that concerto is what you're going to learn. With the technique, it's really hard to demonstrate it. It's really hard to show it on the outside. It's really difficult to extrapolate a feeling into words. And so you don't really know what you're learning even while you're learning it. And one of the questions that we worked on throughout the course of my training, from the first year all the way through, was, what is the Alexander technique? It's incredibly difficult to describe and put into words. The feelings that I had that came up for me through the course of my training, waves of relief, just sheer relief that just puts you into tears because you just can't believe the relief of it. That's the main sensation, but kind of challenging because you have to take steps into the unknown. You have to allow yourself to not be correct. If you're correct, then you continue to do what's habitually normal for you.
Oh, I see.
Because that feels correct to you. So
okay, so you need to expose yourself deliberately to discomfort.
Yeah, you have to step into what feels wrong.
Right.
Because it feels wrong because it's not your habit. So it's not that it is wrong, it's just different from what you were doing before.
Yeah, interesting. And I've experienced that before with even something like communication skills. And people are like, but that doesn't feel authentic to me. Like I want to, and it's like, well, I mean, where do you think you learned what's authentic? You learned your communication skills from your parents and your teachers, and now you're practicing something new, which is communicating in a different way, and it doesn't feel normal. But see, when you see that it's successful, then your mindset shifts and it becomes authentic. You know, I was like encouraging it's a controversy. You can't say these things anymore on the internet. You know, I was encouraging friends to tease girls a little bit more when they flirt, you know, when they're trying to flirt with them. Don't be so nice all the time. Oh, but yeah, because you're panicked and you think she's going to bite your head off. So you think that's authentic. Once you see that she responds to it and she likes it and she runs with the ball, I tried that and the girl snapped at me or didn't like it. And it's like, yeah, because she was testing you because you weren't confident enough. You need to actually persist through the discomfort to realize that if you can tease a girl and also not get really worried about if you're worried about it, she can feel it. So if she can feel it, she'll not react as well. Yeah, exactly. But if you practice it, if you don't let that get you down, and if she gets offended, you go, you know, I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just playing around. You should go, okay then. Okay, fine. Persist. Don't give up too early. It can be a lot like that with this bodywork stuff as well. You know, you've got bad habits. You know, I can sit cross-legged like this for so long because I've forgotten, you know, what it was like at the beginning because until I sit with a friend in a cafe that's, you know, in India where you have to take your shoes off and things like that. And after 10 minutes, they're like, oh, my legs, you know, all right, I've habituated the body. I forget that, you know, that's a thing that had to be developed that's uncomfortable at first, but is ultimately much more healthy than the way that we're accustomed to sitting in a chair. So would you like to tell us some anecdotes of things that felt uncomfortable either to you or people that you've worked with and how it benefited them in the long term to make it a bit more concrete?
Yeah, so what happens is that okay, I'm going to tip the screen like that so you can see me a bit better.
Yeah. So for people listening, you can always go to YouTube or something like that.
Okay, so what tends to happen? Okay, here I am. I'm more or less balanced, trained Alexander technique teacher.
Right. Your posture looks amazing when you sit like that.
Yeah, my posture's not too bad at all. I do have a bit of a lordosis. There's things that I could tweak, but I'm not really that bothered about it. What happens with almost everybody is that you get excess tension. So let's say that somebody upsets you a little bit. What would you do? You kind of go like that. Okay, so can you see that shortened me across there? That's kind of narrowed me. It's pulled me down a little bit there. Let's say as well, the teacher's telling somebody else off for not concentrating. What am I going to do? I'm going to concentrate a bit more. So now I've shortened here. I've added tension. Now, let's say I'm a girl and my boobs are just developing. So I'm not really trying to show them off. Right? Now, let's say I've got to look up because I've got to see what I'm doing. Now I've tightened my neck. Right? So you can see where this is going. This is going into most people's posture.
Right. I can see.
Right.
Thank you so much for the demonstration. Some people are listening on the podcast, so I do recommend you go on my YouTube channel to check this demonstration out because it looks amazing.
Right. So what happens is you go, okay, well, you have to open out your chest. Oh, now I'm sticking my boobs out. Now I'm sticking out my belly. You know, people don't like their belly. No, put your belly in. Engage your core. Oh no, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let that come up. I'm going to let my belly be free. I'm going to let my shoulders open. Now I'm suddenly a little bit vulnerable. You know, that can feel really overwhelming to be that vulnerable, to have your heart exposed. You know, if you're an animal and you were in danger, you're definitely curling into that primary sort of posture. So as you open your posture, as you open your physicality, there's a corresponding challenge of how do I now operate in the world where I'm looking out, I've got my body open, I've got my belly open, I'm relaxed. That's the challenge, and it doesn't feel necessarily comfortable. You know, if you get on a tube and you feel like that, am I now vulnerable? You know, usually in public, people will do that. Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. I don't want to be the person picked on by the nut job that's just about to get on the tube. There's a challenge. So then you have to work out, well, how do I operate in an open way and still feel protected? Because of course that doesn't actually protect you that much. You know, if somebody's going to be a nut job, you're sort of better off noticing them coming and having all of your faculties open to actually deal with that situation. And actually, when you're relaxed, when you're open, people don't tend to respond badly to that. People tend to respond really, really well to that.
Yes, because by being a leader, you're, especially if you're benevolent, you're basically giving other people permission. But this, I think this is something that's brought forth from our childhood into our adult life. At some point, you learn to make yourself small, because when you're a kid, adults don't like you being, as we say in the UK, too big for your boots, or something like that. And you always get in trouble at school, not for being shy, for being too confident, And then
100%.
you learn this, and then you take it into your life as an adult. And this really goes back to the kind of the club scene and things like that, where we was talking about teasing girls. What I found was, the more confident you are in social situations, I would be like, what I noticed one time was, I was in a social situation and a girl said something and she looked at me, and what I realized was, oh, I'm the most confident person in the room, because what she was doing was, she was saying, do you approve of what I just said? And then I realized how much that I used to do that, or maybe still do it, and that it projected less confidence. But what that really means is, you can then hold the space for people and generate a good vibe. And people, if you don't take the responsibility, then you're not, then you're leaving it to this sort of weird unconscious soup that everyone's throwing in. You take control of your posture, you start to project yourself more confidently, you feel more confident. That makes people feel safe, actually, because otherwise it's like, on some unconscious level, they feel responsible for taking care of you as well as themselves, and they're not ready to do that yet. We're all just learning together, and most people don't even think of these things. So it's really interesting how all of these things interface together. I fear I'm getting far from the topic. So would you like to tell us a bit about what kind of things you learned in what order?
Okay, yeah. So some of it is body mapping. So like actual just physical information about where your body parts are positioned. So for example, if you put your fingers there and draw a mental line, that's just literally in front of your ear, more or less there, and draw a mental line between those 2 points, that would be the top of your spine, for example. So that's your neck comes up that far. So and there's lots of those little bits of information, you can do it that way as well to get the cross point. There's lots of bits of information that, if you understand how your body's actually structured on a physical, personal level, not from a picture, not from, oh yeah, I've seen a skeleton before, but in an embodied way, it changes how you move and understand your physical structure. So some of the lesson consists of that kind of information, which is just actual practical. This is where your body parts are.
So does that mean you can feel them better?
Yeah. Okay. You can you can position yourself better in space to understand where you are better in space, basically. Right. So when you have better understanding of where you are in space, then you can manage yourself better.
Okay.
You can balance better. You can coordinate better.
Yes, I'm pretty clumsy, but according to all you say, there's hope for me yet. So, okay, so your body, go on.
Yeah, so that's kind of one aspect of it. Then we've also got the mental thinking processes that allow your muscles to release and let go. So short muscles have the fibers, more pulled together. This is like a very simplistic kind of like way of thinking of it. But basically, if you've got a tightened muscle, it's probably the fibers are pulling in too close together like that. And so then your ability to then contract from that already contracted place is minimal. Whereas if you're a little bit more lengthened out, then your ability to contract from there is more significant. So you've got a more powerful, more efficient muscle. So the idea is that you want the muscles lengthened. Now, that process of those muscles moving like that is physiological. It's not mechanical. So in other words, that is caused by neurons triggering chemical reactions. It's not caused by a mechanical shortening of muscles.
So important.
So if you wanted to stretch those muscles and you just apply pressure, well, those muscles aren't going to really stretch because that isn't a mechanical process. It's neurological. So you have to actually...
And this is what I meant to say when I was saying I realized the way I was practicing yoga was a bit brute force, because I was thinking what I had to do was elongate the muscles physically, but it's more like the circuit between the brain and the muscle has been somehow neglected, or it's been turned off, really. So it would have been better, if I knew what I knew now, to take a very gentle approach and just put a slight stretch in and feel in and start to. And that's one thing I love about yoga still to this day, is every time I go, I feel like I stretch into some part of my body that I've never felt before. It's a very gradual process. And if you can just get in a little bit at a time, a little light goes on and you start to get sensitivity in that area again. It doesn't need to be a great big push. But I think what you're doing more directly acts on this idea of relinking the muscle in the brain.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's the whole neurology, because obviously we've got fight or flight, we've got rest and digest. And when you're in rest and digest, your muscles have a much better chance of releasing and letting go. And we have to get ourselves into a neurologically preferable state in order to let go. But that letting go also happens. It also enables us to go into rest and digest. And so it becomes a positive loop. So we're spiraling in a positive direction with it. The more effort we make, the more we try, the more we want this thing to happen. Like all of those kind of mental processes cause tension.
Yeah, because you're pushing,
Because you're pushing, exactly. So I'm going to try and let go of my shoulders. Well, that's a disaster waiting to happen, because you're not going to try and let go of your shoulders, because the act of trying is now tightening up your shoulders.
Right. So what did you learn as a practitioner helping others that you didn't learn as a patient or client of Alexander Technique? I'm interested in that.
It's levels of depth.
Yeah.
It's levels of depth. So it's like I'm peeling an onion, and you're unpeeling it, and you're unpeeling it, and it's an infinite onion. So listen, we're not getting to the core here.
Exactly.
There's no core.
But see, thinking that you've got to get to the core is something that really deters people. They're like, oh, there's so much to learn, I don't even want to get started. But what you have to understand is the process becomes a joy. Like, see when you read a really great novel and you get 50 pages from the end, you just don't want the novel to end. You start reading really slowly. So when you get into this stuff, it can get to the point where you're like, you don't need to be like, oh, there's so much to learn, I'm never going to learn this. That's when you're contracted. You go, oh wow, there's so much to learn, this could fascinate me for a lifetime, and it probably bloody will. So I just always want to remind people of that, to encourage them.
And every little increment of letting go is a relief. It's not like something you have to make an effort to do. It's like, oh, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
It's something you don't have to do. You're learning stuff you don't have to do, that you're probably doing that you don't have to do. Right. So, we get taught from point naught. Okay, try harder, make a bit more effort, concentrate, do this, learn that, get that stronger, get that bit stronger, be more flexible, be more this, be more that, be more able, be more, all of those things. We never get told how to do less, apart from like some meditation practice. And there are some, and even then
people listen to it and go, oh, I have fucking another thing for me to do, I need to listen to this meditation, I need to get good at it, and blah blah blah. So one thing I'd say I'm interested in is, people, a lot of the time people ask me what kind of therapist I am, and I kind of hate the question because there's no easy answer to it. But what I would say is I've got about a wide range of tools, and probably, I don't know, I've never been a plumber or a electrician or a mechanic or a carpenter, but I'm guessing when they come to a job, they've got a wide range of tools, but there's probably like 4 or 5 or X number that they use on every job or almost every job, and then the others are just a now and then thing. So for me, listen with the intent to understand, demonstrate my understanding verbally by summarizing what I've heard in my own words, ask a open question that expands the client's thinking, point out any contradictions in what they've said. In order of less frequency, those are probably like 4 tools that the first 3, I certainly use them in every session. And then there's other tools that I just bring now and then. I've got millions of them. So I'm wondering if it's a little bit the same as you with teaching Alexander technique. Are there a few fundamental things that you find yourself using or teaching people again and again and again, that maybe people at home might like to be aware of?
Yeah, so the basic principle of the whole thing is to free your neck. Okay, so your neck has a controlling influence, and your neck does go right up to there, like we talked about. Your neck has a controlling influence over the whole of the rest of your body.
Wow, yeah.
If your neck is tight, and you're not going to free it, but a lot of people think, oh, I'll free my neck by doing that. It's not that kind of tightness. If it's habitually tight, that pulls into the muscles throughout the whole of your back, all the way down through your legs, and tightens the whole of your body. So if I went to my teacher today and I said I'd like a lesson, the first thing she's going to say to me is free your neck.
Right, okay.
The first thing I will say to somebody is free your neck. And it is it's something that you learn to understand more and more what that actually means. But that's one of the basic primary sort of controlling influences that we can have, is to let our neck release and get longer and wider. There is something called inhibition, which is stopping the muscles from over tightening, particularly the muscles of the neck, but the muscles throughout the whole of your body. And it's this idea of stopping doing. And then there's direction, which is, if I was to completely stop doing at this moment in time, I would fall onto the floor and I'd be a big puddle and I'd be a sloppy mess, because you can't move around if you completely stop all muscles. And so there's this idea of direction, that you'd like to lengthen in a particular direction, and the direction that I'd like to lengthen is up. So I would like my neck to lengthen in an upward direction. I'd like my back and legs to lengthen and let me go upwards in gravity. So we've got freeing your neck, inhibition, and direction, and pretty much those things will be used in every single lesson.
So for anyone hungry for a little takeaway, is there one exercise that you can teach us for freeing up our neck?
It's really difficult to just.
Oh, okay.
That's a really,
that's
honestly,
fine.
really, it's such an annoying thing, but there's just no particular shortcut.
Okay. Okay.
I suppose
is it very individual? Is it very, yeah? Okay.
It is and it isn't. Most people do the same thing. Most people shorten their muscles and they come and they pull down. Almost everybody shortens their muscles and pulls down in one way or another. So that's just almost what everybody does. I suppose a really useful one that you can do if you're sitting on any kind of chair is to put your hands like that, sit onto your hands, and you'll find that there's 2 little lumps, which are your sitting bones. And if you rock yourself forward, you'll feel that they come out of contact with the chair. And if you rock yourself backwards, you'll feel they come out of contact. And you kind of sit down onto your sacrum, which is what most people do, tend to sit onto their sacrums. So you could spend a little bit of time just rocking on your sitting bones like that to find a kind of middle point. and then slide your hands out. And that will put you more or less in an upright position.
Awesome. So you live in Brighton. It's very interesting that I met you around now, because I just literally went to Brighton for the first time in my life, literally a few days before meeting you. And it's interesting because I've always wanted to go there. And then I met you, and then I came back here and I heard that I might have a training in Brighton myself in October. So it would be awesome if that goes ahead and I get to meet you again.
What's the training you're going to do?
It's another one in the sort of trauma release exercises. I need to get an expert on that on the show. I mean, I've talked about them for years, and for whatever reason, I never did more training myself in them. I guess probably the last 4 years went not the way we expected them to. So it's really hard to rewind my memory back to 2019 and think if it was even on my radar. But yeah, so I benefited from them, and a lot of what I learned really interfaces with that, what I learned in Mexico when I studied under Baudrey Fraser, what you've taught me about Alexander technique. I sent you this video, and I recommend people, maybe I'll do a video on it for YouTube because it would be quite helpful for people. There's a video on YouTube called Gazelle's Lucky Escape from Cheetah and Hyena.
Oh, you sent it to me. It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing, by playing dead. See if you've got any stiffness in your body, people at home. What I want, that if you really want to impress upon yourself the veracity of what Tara's teaching us, go and watch that video, Gazelle's Lucky Escape from Cheetah and Hyena by Playing Dead. See when that gazelle is playing dead, look at its legs, right? That's what my legs were like before I discovered and they're still pretty tight, I would say, compared to the average person, although the average person is more tight than they should be. Maybe it's just a selection bias. I notice myself increasingly over the years get more and more frustrated when I go to yoga and someone who's never done it before in their life comes in and is more flexible than me. Grr. But there's also a selection bias, because most people who've got as fucked up bodies as I have don't even bother going to a class because it's too uncomfortable. So I don't know who's out there. Maybe they're just as bad as me, and I'm being dramatic and I'm
I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. Almost everybody who gets really interested in yoga are naturally slightly hypermobile, and that tends to happen with dance, and it tends to happen with musicians. You often get really hypermobile people choosing those paths.
And exactly. You know, I used to teach piano. I can't actually do a trill, and I was never able to play super fast. And I mean, a pretty good piano player, but I could never play fast, and I didn't realize at the time that was a limitation of my body based on tightness in the muscles. Now, with so many years of learning about the body and trauma, see if you can watch that video at home. Look at the gazelle's legs. That will help you understand that it's neurological. It's not based on a lack of capacity for the muscles to stretch. That gazelle goes into the freeze response, so its muscles are taut. What we don't realize is we've gone into the freeze response at some point in our life, and our muscles have got taut, and then we've forgotten to unfreeze them, and we've forgotten how to unfreeze. In the future, God willing, if we do the work, to share this information, hint, send this to your podcast to your friends and family, we'll one day live in a trauma-informed society that puts the resources necessary into really understanding the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, so that we can then learn how to get ourselves out of the fight, fright, or freeze back into, as you say, rest and digest. And then things will start happening really quickly for us. But, you know, as a society, we've got a long way to go. So the best thing is us as individuals to get some experience in sort of discharging some of this muscular tension. And then you'll know, and then you can share. Yeah.
And it's not just the freeze response that coordinates in that sort of primitive kind of survival mechanism, but it's also located with anxiety.
Correct.
And with anger.
Right.
And so, yeah, 100%, I totally agree that it's really what we need as a society is to work out how not to get into those really. The problem is when you go into those kind of responses, it's very usual to only be able to do patterns of behavior that is what you did before when you were in that state.
Exactly.
And so you then, so it makes it really hard to think in a more global fashion, and it makes it very hard to brainstorm new ideas or come up with new ideas because you're in that sort of state.
In a loop. So this is what, what one of the reasons why I like being part of the Conscious Resistance Network. Derek and I have basically always saw it this way. We change the world by changing ourselves. We don't go don't get me wrong, there's certain forms of activism, but that flows from your nature. The more you heal, you find how you interface with the larger society. And so it's that way. Before you do the inner work, you're basically fighting with a shadow, which is, I feel dissatisfied. There's something out there in the world that's wrong. If I fix it, if I campaign, if I fight, then I'll feel good. No, you work on your inner environment, get to feel good. And as a consequence of that, you will benefit people around you, and that will shape the society. So, granted, people can come to visit you in Brighton for a training, and if someone goes to
any practitioner,
if someone goes to Tara, please tell her that you heard her on the show, because I'd love that.
It'd be quite interesting, Anthony, to do a if you wanted to, we could do a semi-supine talk through. So it would take probably 15 minutes, not maybe now, but at some point.
That would be great.
And do that so that people could have a little bit of an experience.
Exactly. Well, what I would like is, if you're hearing the show and you'd like to come to that, we'll do a little workshop, and then we'll plan for that. And then we can get the emails in, and we can figure out when is a good date and time, and we'll have the demonstration, and that would be really good. Do you also teach online, or is it an in-person thing?
I've had some really interesting experiences teaching online. I taught a wonderful woman who is a GP and had horrible shoulder pain. And her shoulder pain completely went. And then I was lucky enough to have her come to me in person after a period of time, because that was through lockdown. And I found that there was huge gaps that had I had my hands on, that she would have had a different experience. So it was really intriguing, because her shoulder pain went. So it was successful. It wasn't the same. And so I haven't really pursued that avenue just because of that. Also, because of my visual impairment, I find it much easier to work with people in person, because I can use my hands.
Okay. I just want to know, if you want to know more about Tara, you go to tarabentall.com, Bentall. And looks like we're going to run a training for you. It's very impromptu, but I wanted to get more contact with my community and listeners anyway, and start running community events. So if you're interested in that, email me, Antony@beyourselfandloveit.com, and we'll create a little training for you. Thank you so much for joining me on Be Yourself and Love It podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, just I've really enjoyed it, Anthony. Thank you so much. It's lovely to talk to you, to such a knowledgeable and beautiful person. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It means a lot to me that you say that, and I would just relish the opportunity to get to know you better. Guys at home, I'm sorry if I grandstand and take up more of the podcast than the guest. I guess it's just my way. At home, be yourself, but don't just be yourself. Be yourself and love it. Come to our workshop, Antony@beyourselfandloveit.com, to register your interest. Until next time.